Hey guys, and welcome to the final video in the how to build a Hello World Alexa skill. Um, this video is optional. We're not doing anything more with Alexa. I actually forgot to mute her, so I'm going to mute her real quick. We're not going to be doing anything more with her. We're not going to be building out any functionality for her or anything like that. If you followed the last two tutorials correctly, you should have a running Alexa skill, Hello World skill. This video is for people who want to see and want to go through line by line the actual Lambda function that we created and the Alexa response, or I mean the Alexa request that is made for our Lambda request, kind of for fun, but also so we get more of an intuitive idea of how all this stuff fits together to make it easier as we go down the road. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Alright guys, so I'm going to try to go over some of this stuff as best as I can for you guys. Let me know if there's anything that I missed that you guys have any questions about in the comments below. I'll try to, maybe create a second video if I miss a lot of stuff, but definitely help you guys out in the comments. So let's go ahead and start going through this. This is a Alexa request for my Lambda function. This is what Alexa sends my Lambda function whenever I call the Hello World function. I'm gonna kind of go over it. It is just something that I've pulled from like the test page whenever we were testing our function with like text and whatnot. So in this first little dictionary thing, we have our session ID, which is probably it's the current session for that actual like Alexa interface. So whenever you say Alexa hello world, this is the session ID for that. And then you have your application ID. Your application ID is the ID for your current skill, which can be found, and actually I'll go ahead and show you guys real quick. Let me pull up my Lambda or my developer portal. So here's the developer portal. Here's your app ID. If you want your Lambda function to be a little bit more secure, you can set your app ID and then make sure that your app ID matches the request being made from Alexa skill and matches this app ID or application ID. It basically just makes sure that like nobody grabs your ARN from your Lambda function, creates an Alexa skill, and then like uses and points it at your Lambda function and uses it as well as you, like they're leeching off of your Lambda function. If you check the application ID, your code won't, your code won't be able to, or you can tell your code not to run if it doesn't match, essentially. So then you have this right here, attributes. Haven't really used that yet. Your user ID, etc. New basically says, is this a new session? It's almost always not for these types of things, so you don't really have to worry about that. Your request, here's the cool stuff, right? In your request you have your type, intent request. I gave it an intent name because I said asked to introduce us, so this is a specific type of intent. I'll show you where this matters in the code. The request ID, it's just identification purposes. The locale, I'm in the US. The timestamp of when it was ran. And then you have the intent. If you remember, we created that intent schema. This is where it's being put into play. Slots is where you would have variables, like if I had said my favorite color is red, maybe I'd have like favorite color and then red values in there. But we don't have any variables for this code. It was just the intent name hello world. And then you have the version, which hasn't changed, it's still 1.0. So now let's go look into our Lambda function. We have some, this is basic node, but we have some pretty basic functions built. So let's go ahead and take a look. Also, the blueprints leave some pretty cool comments. In case you needed any help or any extra help, you should go through them. Even though they're guided more towards the original code that we kind of changed, I know that can kind of be confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and go over it right now. Build speechlet response. This function right here, as you can see, or as you could probably surmise, is the text that Alexa is going to say. It's the response that we're returning to Alexa so that she knows what to say. This is obviously another JSON output, right? You probably remember this from whenever we were running our test. I'll go ahead and show you guys that as well. Remember this right here. Yeah, this actually. Right. So there's two parts to this, right? This build speechlet response is creating this right here. Output speech, the card, reprompt, and yeah, that's it. It's building all of this. Alexa is going to be saying output speech right here. The type is plain text. She's going to say hello world. Notice that in our output speech, text output, we are in this function passing in the output right there, and that's what she's going to say. Notice we also have another variable called reprompted text. If Alexa needs to be reprompted, if she does not understand what we're saying, this is the code that will be ran. This is the text that she will say. And then we have this code or this card right here, which I think is mainly for us, just to be able to see like what type of function is being ran. It's kind of like debugging if you want to go there. And then, oh yeah, so she does do the session should end. Right? I mean, this function does do the should end session. That's self-explanatory. We pass in whether or not should the Alexa stop listening or continue listening. In most cases, I always say false. I mean true, because I don't want her to listen after she responds with something. But if you did, you could say false, and then have like another function being ran. You could, yeah. And then function build response. This is actually just a few more things of like the JSON that is returned. And then notice that this like response speechlet response, it's this function right here. We're passing in all of this right there to create a little bit of a larger JSON package that just includes the version and the session attributes. Okay, so we've gone over the get welcome response before. Has a callback function. So we're obviously going to be running a function once we get all these attributes. Really all we wanted this function to do is if the user didn't specify an intent, we wanted to say, hey, we're running, the card title here is welcome, because like they didn't give anything, so we're kind of like welcoming them to the function. And then our speech outlet, the first thing that we want Alexa to say is hello, ask me to say hello. And then if they mess up, they wait too long, they become muffled, we say again, hello, ask me to say hello. And then we don't want Alexa to stop listening because we want the user to be able to say hello, and then Alexa will respond with hello world, and then she'll end the session. Notice that the callback is session attributes and then build speechlet response. We're passing in the card title, welcome, the speech output, the reprompted text, and should the session end. So we're building all of this, and then we're passing in some session attributes which we didn't use, and then we're using a callback. You don't know this yet because we haven't reached that point in the code, but I can tell you right now the callback function is this right here, build response. Okay, so handle session end requests. This is really basically if you say, okay, Alexa, cancel. You say, Alexa, hello world. She's still listening. You say, cancel. This code will be ran. She'll say, we'll set the card title, which is like the identification title on your JSON response or whatever you want to call it, so that you know what happened. And then we'll say, tell Alexa to say, thank you for trying the Alexa Skills Kit sample. Have a nice day. And then the session should end. and then we're passing in some session attributes again, but it's just an empty dictionary, and then we're building that build speechlet response. You'll see this a lot because this is basically how Alexa is talking. This is how we build what she should say. Notice that the reprompt text is null because there's no reason why anybody should be talking to Alexa past that point for that same session, because they basically canceled it. Now we're looking at our hello world function. This is really where most of the stuff is happening, most of the cool stuff that's happening. Notice that in the card title, the name that we're using, we're actually using the intent name. Kind of dynamic, that way we don't hard code a name. We can have multiple intents and then still use, the intent name, the correct intent name to like identify it and whatnot. So this intent name is hello world. So the card title, whenever we pass in the JSON, should be hello world. We did not set any reprompted text because Alexa is not going to continue speaking after we have her say hello world. There's no reason to talk back to her. We have no session attributes. The session should end because we want the Alexa to stop listening. There should be no reason for the user to continue talking to her. And then we could have actually done away with this. This is just setting as speech output because we're going to set it right here anyway. Kind of redundant. I should have caught that before. My bad. But yeah, so this is just, we're saying, hello world. And then again, we're passing in our session attributes and a build speechlet response with the card title, which is the intent name, the speech output, the reprompted text, which is none, and should the session end. Okay, so events on session started. These events are ran when Alexa's code first starts. Like when you say Alexa hello world on this function here, on session started, console.log on session started request ID. It's going to pull the request ID from your JSON, from Alexa's request, like JSON request, and then it's going to pull the session ID, which right here, session ID, and then the request ID is right there. It doesn't do anything. It's just when the session starts, it's just a console.log message so that we can kind of get some cool stuff. I've never had to put code in here before because there's no reason. You want to make sure that all of your code is up here when the user actually prompts something for Alexa to do, like uses a skill name or actually gives an intent name. On launch, this is when you basically say Alexa hello world and you don't give an intent name. It's going to get the welcome response. This is, like, as it says here, dispatch to your skills launch. This is basically, you didn't pass in an intent name. You didn't say ask to introduce us. You just said ask hello world, and then it doesn't know what intent to run, so it's going to just run the basic welcome message. And then it also gives a callback, which is the build response right there, sorry. Okay, so function on intent. This function is very important, and you will use it in a lot of areas. Again, this is just a console log message, not important, but the intent is important, and the intent name is extremely important. Notice that these are right here, intent name. So we want to check our intent names. We set this intent name, hello world, in our intent schema, right? And then we said if the intent name matches hello world, we want to call the function hello world so that we get Alexa to say hello world. A lot of hello worlds there. But also, if they had said Alexa ask hello world for help, or something like that, get the help intent, we give them the welcome response. And then if they had said stop or cancel, we give them the handle session in request. And we pass in this callback each time because we want the code to basically be able to find its way back and like build the response and send the response back to Alexa. That's just basic node stuff. I'm not really going to go too far into that. Notice that whenever you call, whenever you have a function that you want to create, like a hello world function, you want the intent. You want the intent. You want to pass in the intent. You want to pass in the session, and you definitely want to pass in this callback. Even though we didn't use the session here, you want to keep that session because it's important for like identification purposes, if you want to log a message for debugging, etc. Once you get a lot of stuff moving, it's important to make sure that you have all your stuff straight. This is pretty standard, and you'll see it in a lot of tutorials for Alexa. And then a lot of people also create this right here, throw invalid intent. This just basically tells Alexa if there was no matches in intents, throw an error and cancel the request. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you don't have that, Alexa will time out. It's probably not noticeable, but she might be like thinking for a while. She might have that little like blue and white checkerboard look around her ring going for like a couple of seconds, because I think her timeout is like 3 seconds originally. If you don't have that error thrown, she'll just continue waiting for a response and she's not going to get any. Okay, so function on session end. Again, this is just when your session ends. There's nothing to do here because, I mean, I guess you could clean up, yeah, if you had any like specific code that needed to be cleaned or close any files or anything like that, you should do it there. But for us, not important. And then the last function is the handler. This is the code that is ran when the initial request is made. So this is actually like where a lot of it is all coming together initially. But this code, again, is usually almost always written for you. You don't really need to know how it works because all the fun stuff happens after it. All of this is just pretty much basic. So, but I'll go ahead and explain it. You have an event, context, and callback. You're going to run a try function right here so you don't get any errors. They're going to log the application ID. This is where you would check to see if your application ID matches the application ID in your AWS Alexa app. And you would hard code your application ID in here. It looks like they have one right here for you, but you would put yours. So if the event.session, so if the event is new, right, they're looking for this new flag right here. They're going to call on session started, and then the event session. Not really important. Cool stuff is here. On the launch request, right, we are going to run on launch event, and they're passing in the event.request, event.session, event.session, event.request. And then they're going to be passing in a callback session attribute speech, callback null build response session attribute speechlet response. What's getting called here is essentially, oops, what was that again? A launch request. Get welcome response. This is being passed into this, if that makes sense, or this, if that makes sense to you. That's basically when we say Alexa, ask hello world, the JSON gets ran here. It sees that it was a launch request. It builds the response from the hello world, from the welcome function, returns it, builds another JSON request, sends it back to Alexa. Alexa basically says, hello, ask me to say hello. If you passed in an intent request, if you said, Alexa, ask hello world to introduce us, this the code, the event request type, which I didn't go over before, but the event request type would be intent request, because you actually gave it an intent to run, a part of the function to run. It will run this code on intent. event request, event session, and then again it will do that build response callback function. This is how this function up here gets called, and how it differentiates which type of intent you wanted, what type of function to run, etc. That's the really important part. I guess if you want to take anything out of this, you should know about that and about this right there. That's how it all works. And then again, lastly, if you ended the request, it would look at the type, see the session end request, and then call on session ended, which was right. Oops. On session ended, right there. It just logs a message. If there's an error, we just call back with that error, so Alexa knows to stop trying to send us a request. It can just cancel and send us an error. That way we're not waiting a couple seconds for her to error out. Okay, so I think I've covered it. Keep in mind you did need to know a little bit of Node. Callbacks are always kind of weird for newcomers to Node and how they work. Sorry if that got confusing at first. Just know that essentially a JSON request is sent. We build a JSON request based on the intent or lack thereof, and then send it back to Alexa. And then in that intent request, we give it a output text to say, and then a reprompted text to say, and then should the session end upon saying that text. Obviously, if you say that the session should end and then you give it a reprompted text, your reprompted text probably won't be told, because it's going to end the session right after it says the output speech. So yeah, so I hope that was really helpful for you guys to kind of get a more rich understanding of how this app works. I tried to explain it the best that I could. So let me know how I did in the comments below. Let me know if you guys need to know anything else. I'm always more than happy to look up stuff. It helps me to learn, and it helps you learn. So yeah, this has been Zayne Sprague with another Technology Today, Future Tomorrow video. And I hope to see you guys in the next series. See ya!